Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kopidana Valabha Girivaradhari Kopidana Valabha Girivaradhari Yasodhanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamunati Ravanachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Dayo Radhamadava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radhamadava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jayo Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrat Vicharya Satarasata Sisi Mati Danik Swami Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktinanda Samar Srila Prabhupada ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki ISKCON Vishwanachar Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidvaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopinath Shyamkunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhana ki Vrindavan Dhama ki Mathura Dhama ki Jagannath Puri Dhama ki Jagannath Swami ki Shri Mayapur Navadip Dhama ki Shri Gaurnitai ki Shri Radha Giridhari ki Ganga Maya Namaya ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki Srila Prabhupada Chansal Bhakti Distribution ki Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Chansal Prasad Distribution ki Nitai Gaur Pramanande Shama Veda Bhakta Vrinda ki All gaudi's assembled devotees, all gaudi's assembled devotees, all gaudi's assembled devotees, all gaudi's to see Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 29th chapter, talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi, text number 84. Etan Mukunda Yashasa Bhuvanam Punanam Devarshivarya Mukanishritam Atma Shaucham Yakirtyamanam Adigachati Parameshtyam Nasmin Bhave Brahmati Mukta Samashta Bandhaha Etan Mukunda Yashasa Bhuvanam Punanam Devarshivarya Mukanishritam Shaucham Yakirtyamanam Adigachati Parameshtyam Nasmin Bhave Brahmati Mukta Samasta Bandha. Etan Mukunda Yashasa Bhuvanam Punanam Devarshivaryam Bhuvanishtam Atma Shaucham Yakirtyamanam Adigachati Parameshtyam Nasmin Bhave Brahmati Mukta Samesta Sunda. Etan Mukunda Yashasa Bhuvanam Punanam Devarshivarya Mukanishritam Atma Shaucham Samasta Bandha. Etan Mukunda Yashasa Bhuvanam Punanam Atma Shaucham Yat Kirtyamanam Adigachati Parameshtyam Nasmin Bhave Brahmati Mukta Samasta Bandha. Etan Mukunda Yashasa Bhuvanam Punanam Devarshivarya Mukanishritam Atma Shaucham Yakirtyamanam Adigachati Parameshtyam Nasmin Bhave Brahmati Mukta Samasta Bandha. Etat. This narration, Mukunda Yashasa, with the fame of Lord Krishna, Bhuvanam, this material world, Punanam, sanctifying, Devarishi, of the great sages, Varya, of the chief, Mukha, from the mouth, Nisritam, uttered, Atma Shaucham, purifying the heart. Yaha, anyone who, kirtyamanam, being chanted, adhigacchati, goes back, paramishtyam, to the spiritual world, na, never, asmin, in this, bhave, material world, brahmati, wonders, mukta, being liberated, samashta, from all, bandhaha, bondage. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This narration spoken by the great sage Narada is full of the transcendental fame of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, this narration, when described, certainly sanctifies this material world. It purifies the heart of the living entity and helps him attain his spiritual identity. One who relates this transcendental narration will be liberated from all material bondage and will no longer have to wander within this material world. Purport. As indicated in verse 79, Narad Muni advised King Prachinabarhi to take to devotional service, rather than waste time performing ritualistic ceremonies and fruitive activities. The vivid descriptions of the subtle and gross bodies of this chapter are most scientific, and because they're given by the great sage Narad, they are authoritative. Because these narrations are full of the glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they constitute the most effective process for the purification of the mind. As Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed, Chaitodharpana Marjanam. The more we talk of Krishna, think of Krishna, and preach for Krishna, the more we become purified. This means we no longer have to accept a hallucinatory, gross, and subtle body, but instead attain our spiritual identity. One who tries to understand this instructive spiritual knowledge is delivered from this ocean of nescience. The word paramishtyam is very significant in this connection. Paramishtyam is also called Brahmaloka. It is the planet on which Lord Brahma lives. The inhabitants of Brahmaloka always discuss such narrations, so that after the annihilation of the material world, they can be directly transferred to the spiritual world. One who is transferred to the spiritual world does not have to go up and down within this material world. Sometimes spiritual activities are also called paramishtyam. Etan mukunda yashasa bhuvanam punanam devarshivarya mukhanisritam shocham yak kirtyamanam adhigacchati paramishtyam nasmin bhave brahmati mukta samasta bandha. This narration spoken by the great sage Narad is full of the transcendental fame of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, this narration, when described, certainly sanctifies this material world. It purifies the heart of the living entity and helps him attain his spiritual identity. One who relates this transcendental narration will be liberated from all material bondage and will no longer have to wander within this material world. Om Ajnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripadam aham vande Sri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. It's a great fortune to be here. The lotus feet of Shri Radha Giridhari, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi, Shri Gaurnitai, Srila Prabhupada, and all the assembled Vaishnavas. So with the blessings of all the Vaishnavas, this is the Falastuti. It is the fruit of the narration. So you have heard amply the exploits of Puranjana, narrated by Narad Muni, to Prachinabari, an allegorical story he's telling him about somebody pretty similar to him. Hint, hint, hint. Close comparison. And the message was received. So here we receive the fruit of that narration, the fruit of hearing that narration. I was asked to speak a few Sankirtan stories, so I will just intersperse them. I was at Market and Powell, just up the road or up the coast in San Francisco, and I met a man and I showed him the book, and he said, I met this man. And I said, that's very unlikely because he passed already in 77. He said, no, I'm from New York. I was there. And he said in 67, he walked into the storefront and somebody brought him up to the Swami. And it's always exciting when you meet people who have met Prabhupada, because you feel like, hey, you're right there, you know? It's like you're right in the picture. So he said he went into Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada was sitting at a low desk and he was doing something. And he sat down and he said it was perfect because he didn't say anything. And I didn't say anything because he knew that I knew that he knew. Now that's San Francisco, you know, that gives you an idea of what's going on up there. So, and after about 40 minutes, he motioned to his servant to give me some food, and I left. And it was the perfect experience. And I realized, that he had to wait for 50 years to hear Prabhupada, because he was so full of it that his coconut was so hard that nothing got in. It took some time, but eventually, still, Prabhupada got to him because that seed was planted, and he had some appreciation, he had some affection, even though he could not hear him because of his positive disposition. It was possible for him to hear him a little later on. Now, how many times have we sat and we were a little compromised by our situation, and somehow the message did not exactly get through? So here we can see how Narad Muni, as the perfect spiritual master, he's devising ways and means in order to actually have impact, in order to actually reach his audience. So he's talking in allegorical stories. Sometimes we have to use riddles. We have to rap and speak in a way that our audience can hear us. We can see many of the acharyas, they've devised means by which to reach the audience. Some are composing songs and putting the message of the Bhagavatam into songs, and in this way reaching their audience. They have put the message into dramas, and in this way they were reaching the audience. So, but the message is the same. What is that message? It is Mukunda Yashasa. It is the glories of Mukunda, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. People are very interested to know who is famous. Like who's the most famous person? Once you're crossing from Nigeria into Togo or Benin, I forget which one was first, and we were there, the police station, they were doing the border control, and it was TV screens all over. And there was one very well-dressed man with a lot of jewelry, and he was dancing around in a church. And I asked the lady who was looking at the passports, who's that guy? She said, you don't know him? You don't know him? He's like the Messiah. He the man, as they would say. And I said, no, sorry, never saw him, never heard of him. And later on I found out it was some criminal, some goon, who turned pastor or bishop or however he calls himself, and he's now the new preacher of prosperity religion, which is a very popular flavor on the market of today's spirituality. So But all these names, they're forgotten. They're forgotten in history. But Mukunda Yashasa is eternal. People have been hearing and chanting about Krishna since time immemorial. And that is why the devotees get together and Tushyanti Charamanticha. They're sharing the narrations and pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is so attractive that even persons who might be satisfied in their meditation will become attracted. When the breeze of the tulsi leaves, of the lotus feet, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead enter the nostrils of the four Kumaras, even though they were satisfied in their meditation, in their realization, they experienced a change in heart and in mind. So that is the power, that is the potency of Mukunda Yashasa. So what are we doing here? We're developing our attraction for Mukunda Yashasa, for the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Shrinvata svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyan taksto hiyabadrani vidunoti suritsatam. The abhadras, or the unwanted things, the things that are giving us trouble. Do you have things that give you trouble? Or is it just me? All these abhadras, they will go away. How will they go away? They will be removed by the vidunoti. A vidunoti is a very interesting machine. You can use it. It's actually a stringed instrument, but it comes in various sizes. And you can put mattresses in it, and by sound, they twang that string. And by that sound and by that impact, the mattress becomes purified. Did you know that you can purify materials by sound? They do that. Sonic purification in science, they do that. And a similar thing we are doing every day by Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dritavrata namashyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. So nitya means continuously, all the time, or every day. Now recently I had a doubt. Now I have many doubts. You know, to have doubts is a sign of intelligence, right? So if I have many doubts, yes. So one doubt is, how come that Tapan Mishra, who was an educated, learned Brahmin, did not know the goal of life, nor the means to attain it? Have you ever wondered about that one, when you read that? That Tapan Mishra just was not in the know, even though he was very educated? And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his purports to the Chaitanya Bhagavat, he gives the answer. And he says, because he was chanting his Krishna mantra silently. That's why he was not in the know, and he did not know the goal. Because he did not engage in the 5 primary processes of devotional service. And he's expounding on Sankirtan, that Samyak Kirtan, that congregational chanting has to happen. Otherwise, that realization will not come about. So, it is good if you're chanting your Krishna mantra, but it is not good enough. You have to, as Prabhupada puts it here in the purport, you have to actually go out and share it with others. You have to preach. You have to share this message with others. Why? Because otherwise it will simply be a selfish pursuit. It will simply be for your own benefit, which is a good thing, but it is not good enough. Because in this day and age, we're very conditioned. We're very attached to the phantasmagoria of this world. And it becomes very easy to become caught up in the flowery language and in the procedures and protocol and rituals, and lose track of what is the actual aim, what is the actual goal of the process. I was out yesterday, just down the road near the beach, and I met many people who had come to this place and who had taken prasad and who had met the devotees, and they were very favorable. Why? Because they were affected by Mukunda Yashasa. They were touched. They had developed some inkling, some spark of affection, a sliver, it's a little fraction. Atapiti deva pajambujadvaya prasada lesha anugrihita evahi. Lesha, anugrihita evahi. Janasi tattvam bhagavan mahinno. Chanyai kopi chiran vichinvan. Unless a person, and that is the same verse that Gopinath Acharya quotes to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he says, you're just like a dry oil cake where all the oil has been removed. It's only scaff. It's only hull. There is no juice in you. Why? You have not received one fraction of mercy. I was in Aarhus, Denmark, at the train station, and met an elderly lady on a bicycle, and I showed her the book, and she almost fell off the bike. And she said, that wouldn't be such a good thing. Who was that? They went, and the door opened, and they showed them the book, and the person and they fell over dead.
That was here. That was actually in Detroit.
Really? And boom, just checked out. So she was really shook emotionally. And again, she said, I know that man. And I said, really? From where? And she said, I'm from Hollywood, California. And when I was a teenager, me and my best friend, we heard that the Swami is in the temple. And we went on our bicycles, and we went to the temple. And when he came, he got out of the car, and we were throwing flower petals on the road. And then she looked at me very mischievously, like a little girl. And she said, and then, after he walked over them, I collected them, and I kept them, and I still have them today. So this is prasada leshanu grihita evahi. And then she took the books, she gave me a donation, and then she said, I've not given you enough. And she started giving me her groceries, her vegetables, her bread. She wanted to give me her bicycle. And I said, it's okay, it's fine. You've given me enough. You've given me your prasada leshanu grihita evahi. I've received that Maha Prasad from somebody who had been touched by Prabhupada. And you could see how after 5 decades, she was there. She was in the zone, as we say. Why? Because she was not envious. She had a service attitude, and she had an open heart. This is Radha Giridhari's abode, New Govardhan, right? So, in the 90s, we were doing Govardhan Parikrama, and after that, we went to Vrindavan Krishna Balaram Temple, and we visited Buddhimanta, who stayed in the room on the ground floor behind Krishna Balaram guest house. It's called the launch pad. Many souls have ascended from there. Even though if you're in Vrindavan, there's nowhere to go because you're there. But still. So, he had been very instrumental in distributing Srila Prabhupada's books and teaching it to others. So, one time in LA, he, after Sankirtan, came into Prabhupada's darshan, and because it was very warm as the summer, so he had just a dhoti on, no kurta. And there's 2 versions of the story. One version is that Prabhupada took off his own shirt and gave it to him. And another version is that he told his servant to go and get the kurta and give it to Buddhimanta. If somebody was there or can find me the exact version, I've heard both. So, anyhow, he was suffering from leukemia, so he was fading in and out of consciousness, yet when he was talking about Prabhupada, his consciousness became as clear as the midday sun. And he was, even though he was visibly shaken by pain, he smiled like 1,000 suns. And he started laughing uncontrollably, like somebody that I know and appreciate a lot. Laughing and shaking. And he said, I was just distributing a few books, and Prabhupada gave me his own shirt. And you guys, pointing to Harinamananda and myself, you're distributing thousands of books. And what will Prabhupada give you? So even though he could have said, hey, look, I'm checking out, like I'm in pain. Things are bad. But like Bhishmadev, who was just happy, blissful, seeing Yudhisthira and the Pandavas, who fought the battle and came out shining and took over the kingdom and were ruling. He was so blissful, he was so happy, he made it all about them. It wasn't about him. He made it all about them. So, he was appreciating us and inspiring us and empowering us in our service, and in this way, touching our hearts forever. Then later on, we went back to the West and continued our service of Bhakti Sibushin. And later on, we heard that Buddhimanta had left this world. And it was on Shivaratri, which just passed a few days ago. And Shivaratri is not a marathon day. It's not even a real great festival day for us in general. So, but when we recalled, we remembered that this was the biggest day we had in the entire year. Somehow people were just throwing money at us. You know, it's like sometimes money comes flying and you can't catch it fast enough. It just comes from all directions, and books are flying in all 10 directions. And that day I distributed 255 Mahabig and big books, door to door. 2 Bhagavatam said, 1 CC said. People just looked at me and they said, yeah, give me. And they're bringing me. So, and then we realized that because today's the day that Buddhimanta went back, and because he dedicated his life to preaching, to sharing Mukunda Yashasa, to sharing this message, Krishna said, today nobody can refuse. Today nobody can say no. And that's quite an interesting experience, because you do sometimes meet people who refuse you. Has it ever happened to you? Have you ever been rejected? And I don't mean just like your friend request was rejected, but like somebody ignored you or told you even, yeah, I'm interested in this, but I don't want it from you. I'll take it from somebody else, because I don't like the way how you talk to me or the way how you look or something. So, but then you also see how Krishna in the heart of the living entity is there, and he's responding to the prayers, he's responding to the desires of the devotee. And if our desire for sharing Mukunda Yashasa is stronger than their desire for sense gratification, they have to take. They have to take, because Krishna is there in the heart. And sometimes they say no, and Krishna says yes. And then they say no, and then they say yes, and they say no, and yes. And it's like, guess who's going to win, you know? We have a plan, but Krishna also has a plan. And one time I was in Rishikesh during the International Yoga Festival, and we brought about 12, 15 boys up there and did Harinam Sankirtan for 2 weeks, just chanting and dancing through the town. And Rishikesh is really great because you have what's called a hanging bridge, which is a very narrow bridge that just about 2 people can get by. So at the landing of the bridge, we will create a big ruckus, a big kirtan mandali, and the whole thing became so jammed that the entire traffic was blocking up in all directions. And people, because it's India, they just got off their bikes and started dancing with us, you know. Can you imagine? You do kirtan at the at the crossing, and people just get out of their cars and just start joining in. And there was one beggar. Now I'll tell that story later. I have to finish the other story first, otherwise I'll lose track. So I went in, when we didn't do kirtan, I just went around and distributed books. So I met a middle-aged yoga teacher from the Ukraine. I showed him Bhagavad Gita, and he says, look, dude, I'm a yoga teacher. Like, you know, it's okay. I know this stuff. Like, back off. You know that situation when you know that if you say one more word, it's one word too much, and you just have to zip it. So I just stood back and let him look at the book. He was still looking at the book, and not completely hostile, but his demeanor was very standoffish. So what do you do when you don't know what to do? Any suggestions? Pray. You pray. Yeah, that's the only thing that's actually left at your disposal. So I just turned inward and said, Krishna, if I've ever been a good boy, if I've ever chanted your name, if I've ever done anything good, please give that credit to this person, because right now he's a little stuck, but you know, he's a teacher, so he can touch people's lives. And after a short moment, he looked up from the book and he said, I feel love coming from your heart. How much is that book? Now that's a Ukrainian yoga teacher. It's not San Francisco, you know, and people have different ideas and inclinations, you know. So getting back to the kirtan and our jam at the bridge, there was one beggar, professional beggar, not a sadhu. He just came out and he stood there at the at the steps just below German Bakery, and he had the spot, and he put his little metal cup there, and he sat there and he was watching us. But obviously the whole attention was on the kirtan, not on him. So after a while he kind of got bored doing what he was doing. So he picked up his cup, he put it in his pocket, and he came down to join us. So he started, you know, and then you know how it is, like he started showing off. He started getting very enthusiastic. He became actually quite exuberant and was chanting and dancing. And at one point he started losing it. And he reached into his pocket and he took out a big wad of cash. And he started waving it around, showing everybody, and taking 10 rupee notes and putting it into the kurta pockets of all the devotees. And he was showing everybody, look at me. I'm not a beggar. I'm a generous person. So when we go on Sankirtan, we beg from beggars. They're all poor people in this world. But we beg from beggars. I've done it on trains. I've done it to people who have no legs, no arms. I beg from them. And they look at you like, are you for real? You want money from me? And I say, yeah. You know, Bhakti, you know? If you give somebody the gift of being generous, you've given them the greatest gift you can give to anybody. As Vaisheshika Prabhu always says, we don't need the money. Because our dad is the wealthiest person in the entire existence. Mukunda Yashasa. He's got all the fame, all the wealth, all the strength, all the knowledge, and even all the renunciation. Beauty is there also. So he became very enthusiastic to show that he's actually not a poor person, that he's actually a generous person. So when we engage in Harinam Sankirtan, we're giving people the greatest gift by showing that they're actually generous. We ask people, no matter what their occupation, no matter what inclination, no matter what denomination, are you one of the good guys? And believe it or not, everybody's convinced that they're one of the good guys. Even if they're a hitman or a pickpocket or, you know, doing whatever they might be doing. Because everybody has that feeling in their heart, Satchit Ananda, that actually, yeah, I'm part of something greater, something better, something actually good. So that is what Sankirtan means. It's not that we're trying to move product and get some money for it. You know, that can be done in many different ways. But we are trying to spread Mukunda Yashasa so that people can actually become free from fear, from anxiety, from envy. Yatredyante katam rishtas trishnayo prashamoyata nirvairam yatra bhuteshu nodvego yatra kaschana. Wherever this Mukunda Yashasa, wherever this kata, this Krishna kata is being heard and chanted, what happens is that in that place, at least while the kata goes on, there is no fear, no anxiety, no envy, no material hankerings. That's pretty good as a start. So the more we absorb ourselves in this, and the more we are sharing this by preaching the message in an authoritative way, the way how Narada gave it, the way how our acharyas have given it, the more power, the more potency is there. So, and in this way we can obtain parameshtyam, or that supreme abode, that supreme destination, which is the spiritual state, which is our original state. So these are some reflections on this verse. I'd like to open up for questions and comments. Yes, Mark.
Excellent class. Thank you very much. It really was. You were saying in the beginning that, we don't want to get lost in the process and forget the goal. Okay. But, at the Hari Bhakti Vilas, we have so many, Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami, so there's so much instruction about the process.
Yes.
And the process helps us reach the goal. So what, like a gas and a clutch, what is that mix of, being attentive to the process but not forgetting the goal? But, you get some people like, hey, I'm beyond all those rules and regulations, I'm on a higher level. So how do you balance it? How does it work?
Thank you, Maharaj. It works by being attentive to the hearing and chanting. When they had the deity installation in Vrindavan, Prabhupada said that he had to hire those Brahmins, otherwise the people would have no faith in the deity. But for him, the Sankirtan was the real deity installation, and that was really what called Krishna to be present, to appear. So we have to understand what is primary and what is secondary. So some things are secondary, they're supportive, but unless we engage in the primary, then the secondary in and of itself will not really carry the full potency, the full strength. It's beneficial, it helps us to come and raise ourselves to the mode of goodness, but goodness is not good enough. Because we're looking for the supreme abode, and that is not something cheap. So Prabhupada gave us the perfect program, just like Vaisheshika Prabhu was just conducting a fire sacrifice for initiation and also for marriage in Los Angeles. And he's recalling what Srila Prabhupada told to Pradyumna. When Pradyumna asked him about fire sacrifices and how to execute them, and Prabhupada was leaning on one hand and he was putting his one arm down and he leaned over, and as a one-word instruction about fire sacrifice, would you like to know? He said, shortcut. Yes, shortcut. That was his shortcut, which means, yes, you do the ritual, but you make sure that the primary is actually what's going to make the difference. So we don't say throw out the rules, free bhakti, raganuga, because that's a sahajya. That is not our process. It's not what we're following. So where does that balance come in? The balance comes in the association of devotees, especially if we have peers. A peer is anybody who can challenge you, is anybody who can put you on the spot and say, hey, what about this? What about that? Like Vijay Prabhu, he was saying, okay, chant chant Jai Om prayers. Don't just do the shortcut, Stay with the program, so to speak. So we're very grateful, even though the devotees may be seniors, but for the sake of doing the Sankirtan, because a team effort really works best when people have this, I'm not calling it equality, but it's a common purpose. So there's friendship, and in friendship means you have to see eye to eye. Even in Krishna's Sakya Ras, there is some who are older than him, and they're more in Vatsalya, mixed with Sakya, and there are others who have pure Sakya, and then others who have Dasya, mixed with Sakya. So, but for the sake of the interaction, it really helps, and that is what people are looking for. They're looking for friendship. They're looking for somebody who they can level with. And that means we cannot have a superiority or an inferiority complex, and what's even worse, sometimes people have both at the same time. I want everything you have and I hate you for it. And that really makes it weird, isn't it? That's really Rasa Bas. That's why oftentimes people are more comfortable and confident to sharing the message to their own kind, to their own people, because they're more confident that they can actually relate to them. They don't feel threatened by them. They don't feel that they have to envy them or look down on them. Yet Srila Prabhupada, and that was being narrated to me by His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj just a few days ago when I visited him in Carpinteria. He never saw a person who was that loving, that kind, and that accepting, yet at the same time completely detached. Because usually when you hear love, you think that there's some expectation of some reciprocation. There's some expectation of some reward. But Prabhupada was, because of his Krishna consciousness, he was able to unconditionally love and be completely detached. Even though some people dropped the ball, some people went off and did other things or became forgetful. But Srila Prabhupada had full faith in the process, and that's why we're giving people a process. It's not a personality cult. It's not a zip code or a t-shirt or a tattoo. It's a process. It's the process of Krishna consciousness. And as Srila Prabhupada points out here, it's very scientific. So we're very grateful to the Goswamis that they have given us the rules and regulations, but they have also given us the essence, which is the hearing and chanting and the spreading of the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's interesting to note that, and I'm going to finish on this point, that after Nimai Pandit told Tapan Mishra that he should engage in Sankirtan, that he should chant Hare Krishna, then Tapan Mishra said, great, I'm going to come with you. I'm going to come to Navadvip. We're going to do this thing. And Mahaprabhu said, as the usual guru says, right, yeah, come to me, right? Come to my ashram, do what I do. No. He told him, you go to Varanasi. I got a mission for you. You go there, and I'll come. And we're going to do the thing. We're going to do Sankirtan together, because I have a plan. But you have to go first and prepare the ground. So, the empowerment is contained in the instruction of the spiritual master. It's a perfect combo. There's the perfect mix in there. So Srila Prabhupada has given us a lifetime of service. This Chaitadharpana Marjanam, this Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, this is the effective process for purification through the hearing and chanting about Krishna's names. We have time for one last comment or question. Anybody? Yes.
Your doubt had been that he was such a scholar, but he didn't understand the goal of life. Sounds like Sanatana Goswami, such a scholar, but who am I? So you answered it in your answer to Maharaj.
This is the end of class. I just wanted to mention that His Grace Navina Nirada Prabhu, for those who would like to learn more about book distribution or enhance their book distribution, he will be hosting a book distribution seminar right after breakfast this morning at 9:45 right here in Temple. So please join us for that. Thank you, Prabhu.
So thank you all for being who you are and doing what you do. This is my first class here at this beautiful temple, so thank you. For being lenient with me, letting me off easy. And there's been a lot of yagya here. People are affected in this area, seriously. And it's a very fertile land. People coming from all over the place. So you can just go down to the water hole and do your fishing. And then you bring him back here, then bring him to the farm. So, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Actually, I met one girl in Santa Cruz. You know Santa Cruz, just up the coast, the home of the homeless vegan. You know, you try to distribute prasad, and the homeless, they look at you and they go like, "Is it vegan?" And I'm like, "Dude, you're homeless. Like, you know, like, it's food." You know. So the girl, she was like, "Hey, I just got a book like that in SanDiego." And I said, "Yeah, Balboa Park." And she said, "How'd you know?" And then she said, "There was a monk there." I said, "Yeah, Vijay, you know, my older brother." You know, "How did you know? How'd you know the guy's name?" I said, "Hey, we're everywhere, you know." You remember in the days in the airports when people used to travel around and meet a devotee every spot they go. And it's like that, you know, that race between the rabbit and the and the, what is it, porcupine? And yeah, tortoise and the hare. You're already here. So you can't escape Krishna. Krishna is already there. Hare Krishna.